everybody, Allie here with Zero Waste Bakersfield, and today I'm going to be doing some canning. Now, canning is one of those, what I call old school arts. Basically, these are things that your grandparents probably did, your mom's generation probably didn't, and now we have a lot of people in the millennial and Gen Z generations who are picking these hobbies back up. So canning is actually one of the older arts that we might consider doing. Basically, this is something that people used to have to do to preserve a harvest and make sure that you could still continue to use it throughout the winter months, through the cold times, or when things were out of season. And these old school arts would also include things like sewing, mending, knitting, crochet, woodworking. I mean, there are a lot of them. And these things are all fantastic to tie into zero waste because they used to be a necessity. Now they're not so much anymore, but that doesn't mean that they're not still things that we should learn how to do and learn how to appreciate. Like I said, today I'm going to be doing some canning. Now, this is not a tutorial on how to do canning. There are plenty of much more qualified people out there who can show you how to do that. What I'm trying to do is show that it is probably not as scary as you think it is, because I know I was terrified of it before I actually got into doing it. Give you some resources and just give you a general idea of the process. Now, whether or not you're interested in canning, canning is just one of many methods of food preservation. There is, of course, also dehydration, freezer preparation, fermentation. Today I'm just going to give you a very general overview of what I'm doing. This is a really great way to reduce food waste. It's not an expensive hobby to get started with. There are two kinds of canning. There's water bath canning and there is pressure canning. I do not do pressure canning. That involves using a pressure cooker, not an Instant Pot, but an actual pressure cooker to seal the jars. Water bath canning is essentially just submerging the jar in a pot of boiling water, letting it get hot enough to push all of the additional air in there out, and then as it cools, it pulls that lid back down so it seals it, essentially. So just some really quick resources to share with you if you're interested in any kind of home preservation, not just canning. The first one you're going to want to get is the Ball Blue Book Guide to Preserving. This, consider it your safety manual. This basically tells you what fruits and vegetables can be canned in a water bath method and which ones can be canned in the pressure cooker because they are different. It also does have a ton of recipes in it for all kinds of different things that you might want to preserve and how you would do it. So this is the gold standard in terms of especially the safety element of things. This is another one. This is a really good one. This is the Homegrown Pantry by Barbara Pleasant. And basically what this is it's a really good reference if you want to grow your own food in addition to preserving it. So basically you would just say, I want to grow, I want to grow carrots. So you would go to the carrot section. It tells you all about the different varieties, how to grow them, the best carrots for you to keep on hand, because some last longer than others, and then how to harvest, store, and preserve them. So what they usually have is what they call harvest day recipes. Yeah, so this is like if you've harvested 1,000,000 ears of corn, this is a good recipe to use a lot of that up and to preserve it. And finally, this one's my favorite. This is the Better Homes and Gardens Make It, Don't Buy It book. So basically, this is going to tell you a lot of the things that you purchase pre-prepared. It's going to tell you how to make them. And it goes anywhere from like Bloody Mary mixes, how to make your own bread, how to make soups, how to make dairy, so like home churned butter, almond milk. It also has like condiments, like how to make your own ketchup, barbecue sauce, all that kind of stuff, and how to preserve all of it. And it's in this really great like binder setup. One of the things that I also really like about it is it does have what it calls the preserving toolbox. It's just the section at the back. And it talks about the different rules for canning, again in a very simple way. The Ball Blue Book can get a little complicated, but this is just, it's very simple. It has pictures. This is exactly what you need to do for boiling water canning. This is a really great reference. I use it all the time, and it is actually where I'm getting the recipe for what I will be making today. 3-herb marinara sauce, and I will be canning that for future use. That is a bird. All right, first thing I have to do is actually make the sauce, and I'm not going to show you too much of that because, to be honest, that's the most boring part, but I am in process. The pasta sauce is working right now, so we're on to the actual first step of our canning process, and that's going to be sterilizing the jars. Now, again, I know that sounds scary. It's literally just boiling them. So let me show you how that works and introduce kind of the cast of characters for all this canning stuff. So this is your canning pot and the lid that goes with it. There's some basic tools. This is a jar lifter, so you can pick them up when they're hot, because you're going to have to move them around a little bit while they're hot. This is a little magnet. It's a lid lifter, and we'll get into why you would need to lift lids later. And then this guy, this is a 2-in-1 kind of thing. It has measurement markings there. So you can see how much headspace you need in the jar. And again, I'll explain that one later. And it's got this guy that you run around the inside of the jar to remove the bubbles after you've filled it. So like I said, first step is just going to be sanitizing the jars. Very simple. Now, this recipe said that it would make 6 of these pint jars full of sauce. However, I cut the recipe in half. Just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and sterilize 4 jars rather than 3, just because I don't want, it's the worst thing, have to try to sterilize jars in the middle of everything. So all you're going to do is unscrew the ring, pop off the lid, set these aside for later on all of them, and then we are going to set this aside for right now. We're going to fill up this pot with water just from the sink until it comes up to about 1 inch above where this jar would sit. So for me, that's going to be right about on this line here. So be right back. I'm going to go ahead and fill this bad boy up. Okay, while I'm waiting for that to fill, I do always like to give my jars a quick wash. Now these are straight off the shelf. They've been sealed in plastic wrap. But just to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and give them a quick soap and water wash. And then the sanitizing process will take care of any germies and any little scary guys that might be in there. So I'm going to go ahead and give these a wash. This is now filled. It's also very heavy. We're going to get our little jar wrap. So now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to get some water in each of my jars, just so they don't float up, and set them on this rack. And then we are just going to slowly lower these down in there. All right, now these are ready to sanitize. What we have to do is put them on the stove, bring them to a boil, put it on the stove, get it nice and hot. I want to go ahead and tackle the jar lids now. Now the lids are really simple. Basically, it's just this metal disc, and it has this sealing wax on the inside of it. While it is the pressure of boiling it that keeps it closed, the sealing wax is really your insurance to make sure that it does stay sealed. Now, what it says to do is get some of the water out of the pot that you're using to sanitize your jars, which, by the way, it's been like 40 minutes and it's still trying to boil, so enough time for it. But basically what I'm going to go ahead and do is just get a little pot, scoop some of that water out, and drop my jar lids into it, trying to make sure that they're not stacked on top of each other, because you want to just be able to they're not going to glue themselves to each other, but just to make sure that there is enough room for all of the sealant to get activated. So I've got my teeny tiny little saucepan here. I'm just going to grab some of that water. You don't need much. And then I'm just going to drop these in here one by one. Put these on the stove at a very, very low simmer. Alright, my pasta sauce is done. It came out great. Now it's time to do the actual canning. Now, biggest thing involved in canning is preparation. Make sure that you have everything that you need before you start going, because you have to move fairly quickly. It's not a speed run. Make sure you do things in a safe manner, but fairly quickly. So what I have going on right here, I've got my ladle for the pasta sauce. I've got my jar lifter, my metal thing, my silicone spatula, and headspace measurer. And now this recipe also calls for a tablespoon of lemon juice to be placed into every jar, directly into the jar. So I've got my lemon juice, a tablespoon measure, and a towel to wipe off anything that drips down the side. All right, here we go. Grab your jar lifter. I'm gonna grab one jar, make sure you have it securely. Dump the water back into the pot. Now we're gonna do that tablespoon of lemon juice. We're gonna go in with our pasta sauce. Now this recipe calls for a 1/2 inch of headspace, but first I did make a rather large mess, so that is what this towel is here for. Now we need to use this thing to remove any bubbles. Just gonna run that down the side, and then we want to check our headspace. So a 1/2 inch is that right there. We're gonna check. Okay, we're actually a little bit high. All right, there we go. So now I'm going to use my little magnet guide to just pick up one of these lids, shake some excess water off, drop it right on top, put my jar lid on, or my band. Now you want to have this at what's called fingertip tight. So basically you tighten it to the point where just with your fingertips you could loosen it back up. Put it right on back in. Gently, slowly, smartly. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and fill up the rest of my jars now. So all of the jars are now in the canner. I put the lid back on. We're waiting for it to boil. And once it properly boils, that's when we can start our time. When it's done, I'll pull them out and then show you the final finished product. Okay, our 35 minutes is done. So it's time to go ahead and pull them out of the canning pot and let them cool. So what I'm going to do is just turn off the heat, let the steam dissipate a little bit, and then we're just going to use our jar lifter to gently pick up one of the jars at a time out of the canner and set them onto a towel, a rack, some kind of heat-proof surface. Let me just grab one of the jars here. Okay, so we're just gently setting that there. I'm going to go ahead and get the other 4. All right, so there we go. Now, you're going to want to let them fully cool down. And because we're putting hot into something hot and then boiling it, that's going to take a while, 3 to 4 hours. Now, after they're fully cooled, what you're going to want to do, and not any sooner, is gently press your finger into the top of the lid. It should feel like a lid that you get at a grocery store that's got like the pop-up button. You want to make sure that it's popped down. Basically, you'll just want to make sure there's no give in the lid. If there is give in the lid, again, it's okay. We just don't consider that canned. It's not safe to keep in your pantry indefinitely. So if you do have any that don't seal, that when you are done, you can kind of pop that button up and down with your finger, it's okay. Just going to put it in the fridge, make sure to eat it within a week. Point I didn't make earlier is that the jars are consistently reusable as long as they're in good condition. The bands, always reusable as long as they're not like rusted or dented. The lids though, anytime you do any canning, you'll need to get new lids. You can get a pack of 12 of them for like $2. It's very inexpensive. I referred to this earlier as an art. Far more than an art, it's a science. You are trying to make sure that there is no kind of microbe or bacteria that is going to get into your food that you don't want. So it's important to follow the directions in the recipe fully. I'm ready to go. And that's it. That's home canning. I promise it is not scary. It's just hanging out with boiling water for a really long time. Alright, it's now the end of the day. I had planned to end my video at the end of the last segment, but something happened that's kind of important to point out. So remember I said you want to make sure you get the nice seal. So I was checking my jars. This one we've got no movement on. That's a good jar. This one, same thing, nicely sealed. This one, same thing. We've got movement. That one didn't seal. But again, that is okay, because what I'm actually going to do is go ahead and transfer this into something freezer safe, and then I will keep it in the freezer since I already have some for tonight. I don't want to go overboard. So this would be freezer safe, except that there's very little headspace here for expansion. I just wanted to share that with you. You know, nobody's perfect. Definitely not the expert on this, but you can always tell if something is sealed properly by checking your jars.